All right, so I'm recording on my Zoom H5 just to be in stereo, as you can tell as I go around left to right. I think I did that right. I keep screwing up stereo. I don't know what it is. Now, this is an interesting one, pulled right from the depths of a Facebook post where I unwisely got into a dust-up with someone who is apparently a legendary producer of podcasts. Not sure legendary status has been achieved in podcasts yet. Anyways, and with that post, it was blindly touting the logic of recording your voice in stereo. Or to be more precise, recording your voice in pseudo-stereo, which I think does need some explaining. Mono is short for monophonic, meaning one sound. Stereo is short for stereophonic, which means full sound. Further to that, there are two types of stereo. You have true stereo, which is when a source is recorded with two microphones. And then you have pseudo-stereo, when a single microphone is used, but the same sound is split to the left and the right. Now, let me be clear. There are no other specifics to any of this. It doesn't matter what the sound source is. If it's recorded with a single mic, that's mono. The best way to understand this is in a dimensional analogy. Mono is two-dimensional and perhaps perceived as flat, while stereo may sound more exciting and perhaps offering a bit of a third dimension to the audio. Which leads us to this, the crux of the argument. When considering stereo, a novice producer might think that recording in stereo sounds fuller, as per the name full sound, which is actually true, but the perception of audio is all that matters. Basically, what is important is how our brain perceives the audio, and to the human ear, you will not hear any difference between pseudo-stereo and mono, unless you're recording specifically to only one side, left or right. Then, of course, one side would only play back. Now, I'm not saying you can't record a voice with two separate microphones. I'm doing it right now, especially if you're looking for a bit of a spatial sound. But for most, that is an odd choice, as most people are not expecting a voice to phase between their right and left ears. In fact, the brain is used to hearing a single version of your voice in both ears, and it may be quite off-putting to some to hear it otherwise. As my old professor in production used to say, only people with two voices should record in stereo, which is no one. Now, I do know of a few podcasts that use stereo to separate voices, having one voice on the right, one voice on the left, and the idea is to make the listener feel like they're in the middle. Now, this sounds good on paper, but if the listener isn't sitting directly in between the left and right speakers, kind of like when you're driving, well, that idea kind of goes right out the window. Other times I've seen it used in audio that isn't all about the voice, which is kind of interesting. ASMR is a great example. And I do know of some ASMR eaters, which, yes, is a thing, that have used stereo recording to great benefit. But outside of that incredibly horrific use, the only other use tends to be in imaging. Generally, these voice files are converted to stereo for added effect, and usually only for brief bits to grab your attention. Now, this is a clip of me and my imaging for some random radio stations. Face it, it happens. And when it does, you want to know about it. Changing weather alerts, breaking news, and up-to-date traffic. 680 News. So then, does it really matter if you record in pseudo-stereo or mono? Not really, other than perhaps some producers looking at you a tad weird. And while recording in true stereo can offer up a fuller sound, well, for stuff that is straight up voice, you can achieve those in other ways. Learning how to compress and EQ is a great start, because while the complexity of a strum guitar may fill the bandwidth a bit better in stereo, your voice isn't going to do the same. In fact, if you're just recording in pseudo-stereo, the listener's brain, being in the center of both signals, is just going to perceive it as mono. So, yeah. In the end, if you're recording voice, you do whatever you want. But remember, there is absolutely no value to recording a single source in stereo. By the way, if you like this video, maybe try this video here, looking at whether or not you can use the Zoom H5 as a main mic, which, by the way, it records in true stereo. Cheers, and I will see you in the next video.